Today's show is sponsored by Lear Capital, the precious metals leader since 1997 and only company I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and viewers. Visit LearAlex.com.
He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
This is going to be an awesome show. You will be very entertained here. We are going to speak to Amber Smith, who was a combat pilot, helicopter pilot, and now is an advocate for veterans, and you're just going to enjoy this conversation quite a bit. Before we have our weekly dose of Emma Jo Morris, my friend and old colleague at Breitbart News, famous for the Hunter Biden laptop from hell scoop. You can't beat this, and you guys are going to really enjoy the show. We get into it with Emma Jo, a lot of parenting. A lot of this phenomenon where people are apparently opting out of parenting or starting to complain about how they really shouldn't have become parents, even though they did. I think all of this is designed to heavily subvert our culture. We talk a lot about Mamdani and his Ramadan prayers on the floor in Gracie Manor, what that could mean. So it's an exciting show. You're going to like it. And before we get into it, I want to tell you something that I'm very excited about, that we have brought back Preborn as a partner to the show. You guys know what I think of Preborn. Preborn gives ultrasounds to young women who might be considering terminating the life of the child that is growing inside of her. And when she sees those ultrasounds or hears the heartbeat of the baby on the heartbeat monitor, she's at least twice as likely to choose life. I bet that's a low number for the lawyers. I bet it's even higher. That's just my guess. Some of the most profound moments of my life are those first ultrasounds, those first time you hear your baby's heartbeat. Preborn is giving that opportunity for women to see that, to feel those emotions, and then hopefully choose life, which many of them do. $280, you can save 10 babies. $28, save a baby a month. $28 a month, perfect way to do it. One of you last year donated $15,000. That buys a free ultrasound machine. Save babies forever. Who knows? 833-850-BABY. That's 833-850-2229 to get involved with Preborn. Preborn.com/Marlow, or go to alexmarlow.com, hit the Preborn banner. All these are great ways to get involved with this terrific organization that I'm very proud to be a part of and have as a partner on the show. All right, let's get into it with Amber Smith and Emma Jo Morris. Welcome Amber Smith to the show, Coalition for Military Excellence, Senior Advisor, Deputy Assistant or former Deputy Assistant in the Department of Defense, or is it Department of War? We'll let her decide. And a combat veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan, a pilot. She's got a really cool background. And Amber, thanks for doing this. I really want to talk about the Iran war more than anything else. But your story is so interesting, and you were in the Trump 45 administration. So that was when he was Secretary of Defense. What do you make of the rebrand, Secretary, where is Department of War now?
Well, it once was the Department of War back in the day, and they switched to Department of Defense. And I think in terms of messaging, they're saying, look, we having the strongest, most capable, most elite military in the world is the best deterrence that you can have. But when it's necessary, we will go to war and we will win. And we have the capabilities to do so. And now we also have the leadership to do so. So I think that sort of shift was just purely symbolic in terms of, if we need to go to war, we will, and we will go to war and we will win. And so, yes, while I was there, it was Department of Defense. But now when you go and you see my old bio, it's under Department of War. So.
Yeah, it's I like it. And also it's because the deterrence, that's the key word. I just did my most recent show. I was talking to Emil Michael, who's the Undersecretary of War, and he kept using the word deterrence. And I thought that was such an important point that we don't really use enough. That's the whole point of all this, right? Is that if we're the biggest, baddest military on the block, then people are not going to mess with us.
Exactly. Keep our adversaries in line. And, when you have sort of soft leadership that we saw under Obama and President Biden, our adversaries tend to start testing the waters and seeing what they can get away with. And that deterrence may not be as effective as it is like what we're seeing today, with stronger leadership, a Department of War leadership that isn't afraid to act when necessary and when it's in the best interest of our national security and the defense of our citizens.
So there's plenty of women in the military, but you don't just tend to fall into being a combat pilot. So I want to get a sense of your background and when you realized that was your calling.
Yes, it was very intentional. The program is something that you have to apply for, and it is very intensive, lots of interviews and testing before you get selected. And then even once you are selected, then you have basic training, your warrant or officer candidate school, and then all of your flight training. So for me, I was a college student at the University of Washington. I took the college route right out of high school, the way most people do, and was born in a very patriotic family. Everyone was pilots in my family. I was a fourth generation military family. And
fourth generation. That's a lot of generations. So what are we talking about? Did you guys miss any wars?
Well, I'm talking back to, my great grandfather he was in the Battle of Verdun in World War I.
Oh my goodness.
My grandfather was in World War II. He was a pilot. He also flew helicopter prototypes back in the day. And then my dad is an Army veteran as well. He served in the 82nd Airborne around the time of Bay of Pigs. And then my sisters and I are now all combat veterans from the post 9/11 wars. So
remarkable.
It's a very patriotic family. And after 9/11 happened, I knew that I wanted to serve. And I thought the best way could be through my love of aviation.
Unbelievable. And I want to touch on that, but you mentioned World War I. I just turned 40, so which means I'm reading a lot of history these days, and it's just part of the rules. You have to at my age. So, and it feels like World War I was the worst war. It just seems like the most unbelievably grueling and brutal and desperate thing to be a part of. Did you ever get any stories from your great grandfather passed down to you about that war?
No, unfortunately, I never got to meet him, but I did have the opportunity to actually visit the Battle of Verdun myself and see it firsthand and hear some stories, just, coming to visit and the people who give the tours and getting to hear some of what they went through. It was just absolutely eye-opening to hear the bravery of those men in some of the worst conditions imaginable. Right. It was awful.
Those are the exact type of people, whenever I'm complaining about, the traffic I'm sitting in or something, or one of my kids not listening to me, I always try to think of those specific generation who's saving Western civilization. And it wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't. But it's a credit to your family. It's kind of unbelievable. How did you fall in love with aviation, and what compelled you to think that I'm going to be a combat pilot?
So really through my upbringing, my dad was an airline pilot. He flew for Pan Am. And so I saw that.
Back when airlines were cool and classy instead of now everyone's sleeping on the floor in their sweatpants. Yeah.
I know. And so he loved it. We got to always, go on trips, and we're always flying on the airlines. And then in his off time, he did civilian aviation. So he had a small plane, and he would take us, his kids, up flying with him. And so we had this early exposure to aviation at a very young age and just fell in love with it. The challenge of it, how no single flight was the same. You learned something new every single time you went. And I loved that. But it wasn't until when I got serious about joining the military and I went to all the different military branches, and this was right after 9/11. I was currently in college, and they all were like, "Oh, you want to be a military pilot? Great, go finish college and then come back to talk to us." But I was like, I didn't want to wait. I was like, I want to go now.
Wow.
And I went and talked to the Army, and the Army had an aviation program, but it was for helicopters. And I had never been in a helicopter. So I met my parents at this air show in Washington State. And they were giving helicopter rides with an instructor for like $60 for 20 minutes. And I had no money. And so I begged my parents to pay for my flight, and they did. And it changed my life forever, because those 20 minutes made me fall in love with it. And I was like, fixed wing, no more. I want to fly helicopters. And then obviously moved forward with pursuing the Army rotary flight program. And that, then got started on all the different tests and the process to move forward with that.
Your parents ever get nervous that you're flying helicopters? Because I don't know a ton about aviation, but it does feel like, the physics of a plane, it feels like a plane does want to kind of stay in the air, but the helicopter does not. Like the helicopter, or something goes wrong, that thing wants to get to the ground very quickly. And it also probably hurts that I was a big Kobe Bryant fan growing up, but it just feels very scary to me, the helicopter.
Yes, my parents would agree with you. They would say helicopter pilots are crazy because you're flying something that has 10,000 working mechanical parts that are all working against each other. And so, yes, they were very the fixed wing side of things. And then I have another sister who flew rotary wing as well. But we love helicopters. It is definitely not as calm or smooth or auto, just turn on autopilot and get to where you're going. When you're flying a helicopter, there's obviously much more going on, and you have to pay. It's much more it takes a lot out of you, versus where I'm a fixed wing pilot as well, and you have to stay engaged really. For the most part, takeoff and landing is where the hard stuff happens. But then once you're straight and level, it's not as big a deal. With a helicopter, you are flying that aircraft from the time you lift to the time you land. So
give me a sense of day to day. You could pick Iraq or Afghanistan, and maybe we could do the other one next time you're here. But give me a day to day. What is a work day like for you as a pilot?
So in combat, what that looks like is you have a time block. So we could fly anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours to, if you get an extension, over 8 hours, which definitely happened when crazy things were happening outside the wire. But I want to say a standard mission block, we would go anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. But there's lots of prep time and planning prior to that. So the behind the scenes type work, where you're checking for weather, you're checking intelligence, you're checking enemy activity in the last 24 to 48 hours, you're confirming friendly positions and convoys that are going through your area of operation, their radio frequencies. If you're doing a very specific mission, then you may have to sit in on a mission brief with the ground forces to understand the concept of the operation and where you fit in and what your job is and what success looks like. And you have time on targets that you have to hit. So there's all this planning that is done prior to your mission. Then you also, once you're done with all of that, you then go out to your aircraft and you have to conduct pre-flight is what it's called. And that means you check operations of the aircraft, making sure it's good to go, checking your fuel, doing a visual inspection of every system and component on the aircraft. And you're looking for oil leaks, loose screws, anything you could imagine. That's what you're checking for. Once that is done, you usually go get some food before your flight. And then you come back, you take off. You should be topped off on fuel, but you do need to go get ammo. For our aircraft, we carried a 50 cal machine gun rocket pod that could carry 7 high explosive rockets. And then we also could carry Hellfire missiles as well. So depending upon what you need for your mission, you go and then you go to the ammo station basically, and you land and the guys load you up with all of your ammunition. From there, you call tower and you go take off and conduct your mission. And then whatever that time block looks like. And we cover everything from convoy securities, medevac, searching for the enemy in the mountains of Afghanistan or the deserts of Iraq. One thing that we often responded to and really became our primary in combat was responding to troops in contact, which is friendly ground forces that get involved in a firefight with the enemy and they call us in. So no day was ever the same. It was very busy and the time usually flew by very quickly. And then once it's done, you usually do like a relief on station with another air crew. And then you come back and you land and you refuel, de-arm, and then head into your debrief.
It just sounds so intense. Did you know growing up that you had a lot of physical bravery, that you could put your physical body on the line?
No. And, that's such an interesting question. I don't think I have ever been asked that. What I will tell you, though, is you learn what you are made of when you get put into those situations in combat. And it doesn't mean that there's never any fear associated with it, but you learn how to be the best version of being able to handle those situations. So for instance, I remember flying in Iraq, which I went to Iraq before I went to Afghanistan, and the first time flying outside the wire, and you always wonder, if someone tells you they don't wonder this, they are not telling you the truth. So you always wonder how you're going to respond when you get shot at, either when you get shot at or you have to pull the trigger. So thought that goes through your mind, I think, naturally for anyone when you go into combat. And that's why training is so unbelievably important. Is I remember the first time where it's verified, my aircraft got hit by AK-47 fire in Iraq at night under NVGs. You could see the flash, and our aircraft got hit, like our entire console, lights, everything blacked out. Nothing was working in our aircraft. It obviously severed some systems. And
so at that moment, are you more nervous about more fire? Are you more nervous about that the plane is not operational?
Well, I will say that the reason that I said your training is so important is the initial thought you have is like, I dropped something called like a waypoint because you want to know where you took fire at. And there's no like I think adrenaline kicks in and there's not actual fear in terms of like you can't handle the situation or you shut down. In fact, it's the opposite. And like your training kicks in and you're actually very efficient, I would say. Yeah. And so it wasn't until after we flew away from the situation, like obviously you do evasive maneuvers and you get out of the situation, and you fly with a flight of 2. And I remember the other aircraft being like, I hope you don't have like an RPG head rolling around in the back of your aircraft that just hasn't exploded yet. And, like once you're out of the situation and you're flying back to the FARP, which is refuel in like a friendly wire to check the damage, like that is when you're like, oh, I really hope we make it to where we're headed, where we're flying, so we can land there before anything bad happens. But in the moment of it happening, it's like you just get it done, and you're not thinking about the what ifs in that moment.
Amazing. And we could do the 3 hours on that topic. But I did actually initially reach out to you because I wanted to talk about the Iran war and your perspective because of 2 things in particular. One, it's largely been an aerial war. I think a lot of our biggest insecurities about any retaliatory attacks, aside from financial stuff, is with drone attacks, with drone retaliation from Iran. So that's I want to get your commentary on all that, and perhaps you can speak more freely about it because the War Department itself is not going to give away a lot of what's going on. That's not Trump's style to give away a lot of strategy just to kind of appease the media's curiosity. So what are you observing?
Well, it is the aerial war, so to speak, that we have seen up until this point has been absolute precision. I think it has showcased the might of our Air Force and just how unbelievable power that exists from our Air Force when we bring everything together and need to use it for something like we've seen with the operation in Iran. It is unmatched. We absolutely own the skies, and that has been on full display since this kicked off.
Have you seen anything that that surprised you, good or bad? Is there anything that you've observed that maybe you're nervous about, or is there anything that you're like, I didn't even know we could do that, and we did?
No, I mean, obviously the torpedo hit. That was interesting in terms of the length of time since the United States had torpedoed an enemy ship and sunk the ship. So that was not something that I was thinking would be used, at least now. But I have to say that it also sent a message, right? Like we haven't used, like everybody knows about the nuclear submarines and how they, are in the shadows underwater and no one ever knows where they are. And they have the most incredible capabilities in the world. But that being said, they're not talked about that much in sort of like an operational capacity in any modern conflicts that we've had. And so this
is a wild thing. And I kind of couldn't believe it. I'm glad you brought it up with the torpedo, because what I read, and again, this is far from my area of expertise, though I'm supposed to keep up on this stuff in general. So the last time we torpedoed a ship was like almost 80 years ago. Is that really the math on it? I mean, that seems almost impossible.
I don't know the exact number, but that sounds about right. It was a very, very long time ago. And there have been, and we're talking US, not.
I just want to be there when that order comes down. Like, we're really doing it. We're going to torpedo this ship.
All those subs now get to have like those like combat affiliations. There's no one living, likely. That has gotten
Why
to
do we
that.
stop torpedoing ships? Like, I start wondering about this stuff. Like how I wonder about, I wasn't, a moon landing skeptic, but it's like, we're not going to go back for like 100 years. Like, how long is it going to be until you're just asking us to start being suspicious about stuff? Like, let's torpedo something.
It was a great, show of force to our adversaries, not just Iran as well, that they are there quietly waiting and can, do what they need to do when they are ordered to do so. So it was very interesting to see.
Very, very interesting. So in terms of the nature of aerial warfare, are you optimistic that we can make lasting, distinctive change in Iran? And I'm not asking you to opine politically, but I'm saying that you feel like we can complete the mission without having to have many or any troops on the ground?
So everybody loves this question, right? About boots on the ground. And we're going to have boots on the ground. And what I will say is that it is War 101, that you do not tell the enemy what you won't do. Okay? That's just like, you don't do that. If you do that, that is pushing weakness. It is not demonstrating strength. If you tell the enemy, well, we will do 80%, but we're not going to do 100%. That, like I said, shows some weakness. So the Trump administration has defined clear objectives of what they are looking to do. They want to destroy their missile caches, destroy their launchers and their defense industrial base to ensure that they don't have the ability to create them. They want to destroy their Navy, and then they want to ensure that they are never able to have a nuclear program to create a nuclear weapon. And so I think that that is what the Trump administration is saying. Those are the objectives. Those are the outcome that we are looking for with this conflict. We are not going to tell you the steps that we need to take to accomplish that. And so I think it is smart strategically. And if it's so, I think there's a considerable amount of time and military operations that still could happen before we ever get to that point of needing to do that. Right now, we're seeing a severely wounded Iran. They still are able to pop things off, and they obviously are shifting from some more conventional style military operations and tactics to pushing to their favorite thing, which is terrorist activity.
Right.
And so it'll be a different phase, but it doesn't mean that, we need to put boots on the ground to accomplish the mission today. What does that look like on the road? We have to reassess.
Yeah, you summed that up really well. It's very similar to the way I put it. Of course, you come from more authority in this regard, but it's you don't tell people what you're going to do or not do. It just seems like an observable inevitability, but that doesn't mean that people get that. One of the other things that is not getting discussed that is just kind of blowing my mind is that Trump sent Iran a letter a year ago where he said he gave 3 demands. He said no more developing nukes, no funding of terrorist proxies in the region, no developing ballistic missiles, and they literally did all those things. And so do we want to have a commander-in-chief, and this is regardless of political parties, whose word means nothing to people? Is that because that is sort of the implication that people who are just across the board hating what's going on? Isn't that what they're saying? Is that no, we think it's fine just to be a paper tiger?
Exactly. And I think that our adversaries, especially in this Trump 47 administration, has had a hard time sort of taking him at his word. They've definitely been having to find out the hard way, which is President Trump says himself. You see his cabinet secretary saying the same thing. He wants to solve things diplomatically. And for the most part, he verbally, has an open door in terms of let's solve this diplomatically. So far, the adversaries that have had to learn the hard way have chosen not to believe him or have chosen to try to call his bluff, and it has not worked well for him. Look at Iran last summer. Look at Maduro in Venezuela, and now look at the current Iran campaign. And so it's we do this time have a leader who means what he says. And I think looking forward, our adversaries would be wise to trust what he says and say, maybe we should come to the table and work through things diplomatically instead of seeing what the U.S. military looks like.
All right, I got to get you opine on the latest scandal that the Department of War is spending money on lobster tails and king crab and steaks and salmon and ice cream. And this was the first time I was actually happy to see what our government's spending money on. And yet I looked down at my feed on X, the Everything app, and I heard this was the worst thing ever. It's like, no, let's just spend it more on healthcare for illegal aliens and DEI programs and schools that don't work. No, let's spend it all there instead of actually supporting our warfighters. I thought this was sort of an own goal by the media that tried to play this up, but you got to have a take on this.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, tell me, you know nothing about the military, you know nothing about leadership, you know nothing about morale, by some of the stuff that I saw on Twitter. And it's like our military members do a lot. They are away from their families for a large period of time. So they're putting their lives on the line. They have very high stress jobs. And I think that I remember when I was deployed, it's called Friday Surf and Turf. Like, it's something military members look forward to. Sometimes you get it once a month, sometimes you get it once a week, depending upon what base you're at. And it is such a morale booster. And that is what I want my tax dollars being spent on, supporting our troops, their morale, and ensuring that they know us Americans here at home want them to have something nice that they can look forward to while they are protecting us.
It's just one of these things where
this is a controversy.
Exactly. And it just these people, I just think about, I like lobster tail. I like king crab. I like ribeyes. It's how come I can eat that way because I talk into a microphone and I'm good at blogging, but people who are fighting our wars and keeping the world safe can't because the media is not happy about it or something? It's like, what are we doing here? It just seemed like a good chance to just point out, no, that sounds great. Like, I just want to incentivize people who are best and brightest to help our country and help the world. And I feel like steaks and ribeyes and lobster tail might help a little bit. And that seems like a positive thing.
Yeah.
So,
and
please.
even more of like, I'm sure those people want to say thank you for their service.
Thank you.
For
Exactly.
Okay, how about you support them and let them have some lobster tail and a steak?
I feel like we could probably could have spun up some sort of a counter initiative where we're sponsoring more steaks and lobster tails for our troops, because I think that's a good thing. I think you get people on board with that. It's like a viral charity campaign.
It can be the new like recruiting slogan. Yeah, they should use it.
It really could. It really could. Come for the adventure, stay for the steaks and lobster.
Exactly.
So tell me about what you think. I got two more for you. You've already been generous with your time, Amber. But what is your hope for how this thing concludes? Because it's high stakes here. We've already sacrificed a lot. Service members have died. Others have been injured. We're very pot committed here in terms of getting a desirable outcome. What do you think that could look like?
Well, look, I think the American people are not interested in forever wars, and I think they're very grateful that they have a commander-in-chief who understands that, military operations are going to be necessary around the world to ensure the safety and security of our nation and the American people. And so when it is America first, and these types of operations have to happen. Thankfully, President Trump and his team have said they have a plan to go in, accomplish the mission, and then it's over. This is not any sort of prolonged Middle East, looking back 20 years that we have experienced before. Iran posed a serious threat to the United States of America, and President Trump was never going to allow them to get a nuclear weapon. And so I think that, I saw a recent poll that showed that, well over 80% of MAGA voters believe that the military operations going on in Iran right now make America safer and are America first. And so I think what those three objectives that I spoke about earlier, that the Secretary of War talked about, that's what needs to be accomplished. And once that is accomplished, then it will be done.
Tell me about what you're doing now. You're advocating on behalf of veterans, Coalition for Military Excellence. You're a senior advisor there. You go to militaryexcellence.org. What's the coalition do, and what do people need to know about it?
Yeah, militaryexcellence.org. You can go learn more about the organization. And it's really advocating for a strong, secure military that will ensure the safety of our nation, and ensuring that our warfighters have, the best technology, the best leadership, and readiness. All of that is absolutely necessary for military success and then the safety of our nation. So I encourage everyone to go take a look at the website and see how they can get involved. militaryexcellence.org.
Very cool. You got a couple of books out. Unfit to Fight is your latest, How Woke Policies Are Destroying Our Military. Next time you're back, we'll talk about that, because I definitely want an update on how you think the unwoking or the unwokeification of our military is going. But I don't want to keep you any longer. Amber Smith, wonderful stuff. Really nice to meet you. And thank you for all the personal stories as well as the analysis. Let's do this again soon. And thanks again for the time on the Marlow Show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys know what I think of the American Beverage Association, because you know how much I love those drinks that I grew up with and still love today. I'm talking about Coke, in my case, Diet Coke, Diet Dr. Pepper, all these stuff. It's terrific drinks. These are iconic American brands, and they're part of the American story, and they have been for over 100 years. With everyone talking about American jobs, these companies have been walking the walk for workers, for American hometowns. They've been creating those jobs. They've been creating those opportunities. They employ over 275,000 men and women in all 50 states. They're all people who show up every day, do the work, and deliver for our economy and our communities. And they give you that crispy Diet Coke that I look forward to a couple of times a day. See for yourself everything they're doing at wedeliverforamerica.org. That's wedeliverforamerica.org. Portions of the Alex Marlow Show are sponsored by the American Beverage Association. I just turned the recorder on. I didn't even tell Emma I was doing it. So that's what all the cool kids are doing. But I'll tell you what the cool kids do. They start the recorder, but they don't announce that they're cool for doing so. So I got to work on that a little bit. But just like Joe Rogan, you start doing, he doesn't even intro his own show.
Yeah, exactly. And they're in the middle of smoking a cigarette and talking about whatever, and then it's like, wait, is this on? It's cool.
Just like he's still chowing down a protein bar or a jerky stick. Emma, we're starting today. We're not doing politics because I want to talk about this phenomenon of people now basically saying they hate parenting. We are in a absolute crisis in this country where we are being replaced and subverted by other parts of the world. We're seeing almost the entire West get swallowed up by countries that are sending not their best to infiltrate America. And we're very casual about this. It's very tough to talk about sometimes, but now we've got a bunch of people out there who are just talking about, bad parent, don't like being a parent. What is this phenomenon? Does it have a name? And what do we need to know about it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it should be. I had a little politics, although honestly not even. It was like Mom Donnie's Ramadan celebration.
We'll get there.
Mansion, maybe we'll get there. But yeah, it's a recurring discourse that I've been finding, and unfortunately for me, I get so upset by it. I get so triggered by it in a way that's actually uncharacteristic. For me, like typically my impulse is to be catty about things that I find stupid, but this actually kind of makes me a bit emotional in a way that I'm not used to. And I hate it. I get very triggered by it, and I've seen it since like January. I've seen it come up multiple times. I've seen it on Twitter, and then because it's gotten so hot on Twitter, a few people have actually published about it officially. The most recent piece about it that I guess is the reason why we're talking about it on today's show is New York Magazine. The Cut did like a vignette of 3 women who they allowed to remain anonymous to talk about basically how much they regret becoming mothers. And I guess this wouldn't be worthwhile to mention, like shitlib rag writes about how much motherhood sucks. That's not very interesting, except that I've noticed it as part of a pattern. And not only on the left. I mean, the last piece that I saw about this was published by Sohrab Ahmari in Unheard, which is he is, a very well-known conservative editor. He was formerly editor of the New York Post opinion section. And he's a, very conservative, religiously conservative guy, which I found interesting for him to make that decision editorially. But his stance was, this is a sentiment that's occurring, so why not let somebody talk about it, which is cool and fair, and I totally agree with that. And so, it's kind of moved into both the left and the right mags and discourse, and it's interesting, especially I think as we come out of the haze of the third wave feminist lie that women don't need motherhood or that motherhood could wait. I think we're kind of coming out of that culturally, and now we're talking about, okay, well, how do we feel about motherhood then, if that's what we're doing? So that's why I thought it would be interesting to bring up from my perspective.
Yeah, it is interesting to bring up because I feel like this is inevitable that people who are we have so much time on our hands because we've cured boredom, which was a mistake. We did that with our phones so that now you'll never have to be bored, which is all my best ideas always came from being alone with my own thoughts. That's where I have 100% of my good ideas are in those scenarios. And we never have that now. So we're doing that to ourselves. And then we've had all this coaching that a woman's purpose is not motherhood and a man's purpose is not fatherhood, less so the latter, but it's both of those are pervasive in society. So it just follows that the next thing will be just people who are actually parents saying, yeah, I'm not really into it and I don't really want to hang out with my kids, and just people who are not creative or optimistic with what to do in their scenario. They just view their children as inconvenient even when they've already had them. I find it to be unbelievable because for me, I'm a big evangelist to have children, as you know. And one of the things I always say to people who don't want to have children yet or think they might not be up for it, I always say to them, you haven't met your child, because the second you meet your child, that the love you'll have for them is so overwhelming that you'll be so interested in them as people. And that continues to be literally my favorite thing in my life. And people say literally when they mean figuratively. I'm saying literally because of literally is the unique personalities my children have. is that they're all different, and I love getting to know each and every one of them. And that's the most fulfilling thing that I do every day, is get to know those children. And some people was like, yeah, not for me still. I'd rather sit in a porch and drink coffee by myself and then go to an industrial park and go to a brewery or something. And it's just like, that's not the point of life for me.
Yeah, no, totally. And I knew that this would be a good topic for you, because I know that obviously you're like the biggest, I think, parenting maximalist that I know. You're the most enthusiastic father that
I am the most enthusiastic.
Yeah, I know, but it's so adorable and it's so sweet and it's such a great quality. And I actually feel the same way, but I think maybe part of the reason why I'm so triggered by this content is because I relate to it on some level until you get to the conclusion of what the feelings are about it. So, for example, this piece that is the most current one, it was published by The Cut. I recommend everybody go read it, just because it's like kind of interesting. It's just like a voyeur of these people.
It's literally called "I Regret Having Children," so it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah, and it's going around. If you have a connection to the internet at all, you'll probably come across it. It's a very inflammatory headline, I guess. But if you read the women talking about it, like why they regret having children, I can actually sort of relate to bits and pieces of it. Not any one experience really,
right.
But my personal encounter with parenthood was sort of like, first of all, as we discussed, I think on last episode, I guess I've been outed. I have a wife, and so she carried my first child, and we are now on my second child that I am carrying. And I was very apprehensive about parenthood, selfishly, for sure, because I'm a garden variety narcissist, obviously, like a millennial yuppie. And I was very worried about my life and my work and like my writing and like my hours, like, as you know, when you hired me, I would be sitting in cafes till 2 a.m, like talking to like other writers about like what's cool, and then going and like thinking about it for another month and then writing about it on Breitbart. And that was my life. And it was like sipping Sauvignon Blanc, smoking cigarettes, and being in like this like writer scene. And I didn't know how a kid would fit into that.
Right. Yeah.
And my wife has a very traditional sensibility. She's actually ironically much more conservative than me, although she'll tell you she's totally not political. But she's very hardcore. And she was like, we're not getting younger, and like, I don't really know what we're doing day to day, and I think it's appropriate to have children. And I was kind of like, okay, I guess I'll go with this. I was very apprehensive about losing my quote unquote identity. And then the kid shows up. And the first moment I saw her, I'll share this story with the audience because it was a story that was a pivotal moment in my life. We ended up having to do an emergency C-section for my daughter. And so I don't know if anybody is listening.
You couldn't have a water birth? You couldn't pull that off?
Yeah, right. She wanted to do that.
Has there ever been a water C-section?
Crazy.
Been a water C-section?
I was just a hard no on like the getting some chick to come over and deliver the baby in the bathtub. But no, so we were at the hospital, emergency C-section. So good thing we were there. And so I don't know if your wife has ever had one or if you know anything about it, but the mother is, she can't get up to take the baby, obviously. She's being operated on. So they take the baby out and they have to operate on her to finish the operation. And so the baby is just basically brought to the scale, and then the other parent is there. And okay, I'm going to the baby like right away. Obviously, she'll be fine. She's 31. This baby is 1 second old. Somebody should hang with her. And so I go over to her and she's crying. And I just said to her, "Hi, Noah." And she looked at me and recognized my voice and stopped crying. And it was one of the most incredible moments of my life, where I instantly fell in love with her in a way that I can't even explain.
Yeah.
And in that moment, my old self died.
Right.
And I was so cool with that, because I looked at this kid and I realized that she mattered so much more than any conversation I was having after 3 drinks. And the difference, I think, between these women in the story and my experience, and I've had this experience now over and over again in various iterations in various ways. And now again, now that I'm pregnant, it's very, I'm having the experience again in a different way. But it's like, let your old self die. And the fact that you can't is so regressive and immature. Like they're talking about how, there's like this impression you want to say that these women are narcissists, but it's actually not even that. It's, I think, nihilists, where it's like, you don't see any point. You don't see any point, and you don't see any growth for yourself and any opportunity for yourself in rising to this relationship with this child. And that's really interesting about it.
So
it's like,
this is what's interesting to me is that people's rationales for why they don't like it that are in this article are just not that strong to me, because people just hold on to things and they can't let certain things go and they can't make adjustments, which I always thought that one of the things that is best about human beings is that we're adaptable and that we are flexible and that you can learn how to do things. One of the first anecdotes in this piece from The Cut is about how what the mother who ends up not liking children really wanted to do was to paint, to read, and to do chores alone.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, painting, you can paint, just paint a little less. Paint when the kid goes to bed. Reading, you can read after the kids go to sleep. And also you can do audiobooks. Like I adapted to I'm a big reader, so I do a lot of audiobooks now. And doing chores alone, it's like, come on. It's like you don't really need that. It's like you can do chores with a kid playing with you. You can tell the kid, make it an activity. That's not a reason to get have kids because you have to do chores alone. That is someone who's extreme narcissistic tendency. If I can't have a kid because I need to do chores alone. And I just wonder if people hear themselves talking this way. And then another one, which is a real consideration, is, I might need $75,000 extra dollars to do that. Well, I always try to and I don't want to get all self-helpy on everyone, but I always try to allow for my new pressures in life to motivate me. And they do. It's always worked for me. And I don't purport to be a normal person, Emma. I would never accuse myself of being that. But it just, whenever I have a big major expense, like let's say a new child, then I always just think, well, how do I take my skill set and my time and try to squeeze an extra $75,000 out of it? And I usually figure it out. Like not every year, like some years, it takes me 2 years to figure it out. Like it doesn't happen the second I put my mind to it, but usually it does work out. Usually I come up with a way to do it. And I feel like that's healthy. Like that's the human experience. The human experience is not late night cocktails and vacation. That's not it. That's not the whole thing. And you can have those too a few times a year.
Yes, for sure. And even more than that too, it's like there's something to be said too, and I'm having this negotiation all the time. In our case, it's, maybe, thank God, we're both resistant and then we're both pushing each other. No, take time for yourself. Please, I insist. Let me take off work for the day and hang out with the baby and you do you. And we have this like fight and I'll be like, no, I insist. We're getting a nanny. I insist once a week. And, it's, so that's that. But, again, like I'm listening to this identity, my identity. What's my identity? The painting and chores by myself or whatever. And that's your identity. It's like, again, what a shallow view of identity. It's like, well, okay, you sound like extremely lame, because I would imagine that like becoming a person and like individuation, like again, like that requires like allowing for growth. And what these women are yearning for is, again, to like regress back to their pre-motherhood self, which is like just, I don't know. So you're trying to infantilize yourself. You're trying to be like extend your adolescence, which I guess you can't blame them, because that's apparently now what we do is we say in adolescence into our 30s and older, and it's just this really ugly, like there's no perception of how ugly it is and also how ridiculous those claims are. I'm the same way. It's like we had the same thing where we were like, oh wait, like daycare like doesn't even make sense actually, so we're just gonna have to figure out how to mash 2 salaries into one job.
And in adolescence,
that's the pleasure of figuring that out, and you do.
And it's one of those things where that whole expression, adolescence, like this is just all, if you do one of those graphs, like when it's being used, I'm sure it'll just be, in the last 20 years. It's a new word. It's a new concept. You were used to expected to grow up faster because that was better for society. And now we're just causing all these problems by delaying our abilities to and it's all industrial complex. It's mostly the higher education industrial complex that encourages us to be infantilized and to spend our 20s, finding ourselves instead of doing productive work and building families. That was kind of what really went wrong. But it's having an effect on a cultural level where we're just we're granting them permission to waste a bunch of their time. And the priorities in our 20s have been set to finding yourself, getting a piece of paper from a liberal arts college, and traveling all sorts of places, or just killing time with friends and making friends. And those are not the priorities. Priority number one should be family formation, finding a spouse that you can have a meaningful life with, and then developing your career. For me, in my 20s, I worked 24/7 because I could, and that got me where I needed to go. And so then when I got to my 30s, and I had basically got the jobs I wanted, then you can start delegating certain responsibilities that are not as important, and you can start being more efficient with your time. And then you can use some of that time for family, and some of that time you can use to, squeeze out an extra $800 a month so you can have someone help you clean your house or help you watch your kids. And then all of a sudden your lifestyle gets better. None of this, I just gave more wisdom in the last 45 seconds than I got my entire life, aside from, luckily I had good parents. But no one else in society is explaining this stuff to you. And we're supposed to luck into this stuff. And there's too many people waking up in their 30s or even 40s and being like, I think I probably made some bad choices for the last 20 years.
Yeah, well, that, exactly what you're saying is exactly right. And then it makes you go back to that article in your mind and think to yourself, hey, like, what kind of people were these people before the kids? Because in my mind, and I operate the same way. I mean, this is totally just turning into a mutual back patting session, but it's just true. The life is something that speaks for itself, and it speaks to like certain values. And it's like, again, like, first of all, I see my spouse as my partner. I see myself as there for her, and she's there for me 100%. And it's like, if I'm feeling like I'm getting like, something's building up where I just need to let off some steam and go for a walk, you got to be able to say, hey, do you mind? Do you mind if I lean on you for an hour or two? Because I need some space or whatever. None of that makes you a bad parent. Letting it get pent up and refusing to be flexible is what makes you a bad parent, because then you can't regulate. Which, by the way, this is like something that was also so striking to me about, and how infantile the first writer was, where she says, she talks about how it's impossible for her to regulate her emotions anymore.
Right.
That it causes her child to become completely unregulated, which is like, you think, but she doesn't make that connection. It's just obvious to the reader if they know what they're looking at. And, and it's just, I don't know, you just look at that and you think you're refusing to be pragmatic, and you're refusing to make a hierarchy of values to make your life work, because you're stuck in some fantasy of like what fun is. And it's like, no, like you're just refusing to adapt to the life that you have and to your children's needs, which is really sad. But the thing too is, like, I think that just on this like extended adolescence and infantile behavior in adults, I wonder if this whole thing is almost like a cope. Like, you have so many women who are in there, at least I see them, mostly women, sometimes men, but more rarely, who are in their like 40s, who the ship has sailed for, and they don't have kids. And the reason is because the propaganda worked, that was going on in the last 10 years or 15 years of how women should be girl bosses and not worry about kids. And then they find themselves existentially lonely and bereft. And I don't know, is this like a recoup for that? Is it like, let's cobble together a couple testimonies about how this wasn't really that great? I don't know. I have that systemic kind of view of media where I'm like, everything is kind of an op. So what's the reason that you're saying this? And it makes me wonder, like, is this some sort of soothing mechanism for the women who missed the boat because I don't
think so. I think this is more of an op. And this is where I like to say when things are not an op, because then when I come back and say, no, this one feels like an op, then I would like to think I'm more credible. I want to read from the end of this article. Where the writer says that she says, genuinely, if there is a hell, I've been living in it since I gave birth. My son has a low tolerance. What?
Yeah, you created it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and again, this is anonymous, but if this is a real person, then maybe this is all just a big troll to see if the Cut magazine would publish it, which is supposed to be the prestige version of New York Magazine, by the way. So this is not a joke, as Joe Biden would say. Okay, so if there's a hell, I've been living it since I gave birth. My son has low tolerance for frustration and doesn't communicate other than whining, screaming, crying, throwing things, and pulling my hair, which is, again, it kind of reads like satire. I mean, that's way over the top. And all kids do those things, and they don't do them all the time. All right, I'm going to go on. I've tried so hard to do the things early intervention advised us to do. I read the books, play the music, dance around, and nothing works. Every day things get worse and worse. I wake up and count down the hours until my husband comes home. At some point, I thought I can't keep living like this, and neither can my son. My husband and I are taking steps to separate. No wonder the husband didn't want to stay with this lovely young woman. And he's willing to take on the role of single parent. No kidding, I would too. Which makes me feel incredibly guilty, but I can't live this life with him anymore. I'm not the parent my son needs. I don't feel anything for him. I don't want to wait it out for years and walk out when he has actual memories. Right now, he's very young, and you can fake things, but I can only fake it so much. This is just peak narcissism. If this is a real person, I've never seen anything like it. And here's where I think the op comes in, Emma. And I'll get your reaction to this, then we can talk about Mamdani. This to me feels like do not have kids. It is saying that we want America to be overrun by the immigrant population and not have any American culture or American people or any cultural heritage. We want to just destroy it. This would be it. This would be the generational neutron bomb if you're convincing mothers, openly trying to convince mothers to not have children.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think we lived through that op, and it recently sort of like the frame cracked. Somehow there was a critical mass of women saying, wait a second, I'm miserable and lonely, and now it's too late. I think that was also accelerated probably by the trans madness in a way. Like we just completely, like they jumped the shark on desecrating and degrading femininity to an extent where women kind of revolted and were like, wait a second, like all of this is actually disgusting. The whole discourse that led to this is disgusting. We're currently in a disgusting place and I won't take it anymore. And that is where I think there was a turning point in this conversation. But as to this, it's funny because I look at that and I can see every mistake. I can see every mistake in perspective. I can see every mistake in action, even the way she describes the way the child acts. It's like, I could so see it, and I could so see what she didn't do to tend to it.
Right.
It's like just really sad because it's all to me so avoidable when I listen to it, especially like having a toddler. But
and what is this waiting for the husband to come home stuff? To take the kid out of the house, just go to the park, like go find something to do.
You're looking at what I'm realizing in talking to you versus what it says on the page. It's like we're talking about it as people who are into parenting and love our kids. And these are people who have refused, again, like we said, refused to grow into the role and are just stomping their feet, which, the image it conjures is of a toddler herself, stomping her feet and refusing to engage. And so, I think that this is post-op as in post-psyop to get people to not have kids. And I can't see it as anything other than, hey, guys, hey Gen X, hey older millennials, sorry about all that. Don't worry. A toddler isn't the little miniature you who wants to sit next to you all day long and have you read to them and have you color with them and have you play with them. It's not the child that wants to crawl into your bed in the middle of the night and cuddle with you because they're nervous or they're not sleeping well. No, it's not that. It's tantrums and I want to leave my husband. It'll just lead you to misery. It's like they are recouping and saving face for the way that they have sold or the way that they've sold people on not entering parenthood. It's got to be. They already screwed up the don't have kids thing. It's now we're making up for it. No, it's not that great.
A couple of quick points, and then I want to talk about Mamdani. First of all, you adjust, you can grow, and you learn strengths and weaknesses. And every kid needs something different. Is one of my children just wants to play. My older two, one of them just wants to play sports all the time. And the best way to relate to him is to play sports. Very easy for me to do. Other one likes when I take him on trips. So I got to bring him on work trips, and he goes absolutely crazy for that. He couldn't feel more connected to me than when he will follow me around doing work stuff, and that makes him feel like $1 million. It's completely different. And you got to figure that out. That's part of the fun. And then you feel freaking great when you do. We're like, oh, we got something. We got through to someone that you're trying to connect with.
That's exactly it. And that's what I was saying it sort of sarcastically. It's like, no, it's not, it's not the most moving experience of your life to simultaneously get to know and also guide a little child who's yours, and that is the deepest relationship I think probably you'll have in your life. No, it's not that, but of course that is what it is. They're just almost being intentionally obtuse and ignoring it's the most moving thing you'll do. And it's the most pleasurable and delightful and like joyful thing you'll do. It's like, I just had this. I walked out of a coffee shop. I was going to get a coffee and my kid is in the stroller outside, and I come out and she just gives me the biggest smile, like it was as if she was the first time seeing me all day. I had just seen her 5 minutes earlier. And I said to my wife, I was like, there's so much joy that I feel when I look at her and see that smile that it's like impossible to describe. I've never felt it before. No offense, but I've never loved anyone like I love this kid. And, you can't say that part because there's too many women who have been hoaxed into missing it.
I gotta say, I had a long work day yesterday, and when I walked in, it's always fun to see who comes up and greets me. And I got the great greet from a wife, which is not always a guarantee, even though she likes me a lot, but it wasn't, but she gave me a great greet. And the baby, just the most unbelievable, my 2-year-old, just running up to me, arms flailing, hair was all wet from her bath, just beyond joy for me.
You can't put into words the experience of that greeting, and
it's out of body. It's the heaven on earth to have that experience.
Yeah, that's it. I think if women knew exactly what they had missed, because they followed the TV, they would revolt.
Totally right. And if you're feeling that way, just follow different people online. You're probably watching the wrong reels because there's more positive stuff. All right. You're my unofficial New Yorker, probably my official New York correspondent at this point. I think we can make it official. I think we can make it official. So weird stuff going on. So a nail bomb that tried to take out white anti-Mamdani protesters was then blamed, which was from ISIS-connected guys, was blamed on the whites who were trying to, I guess, kill Mamdani multiple times on CNN. That took place. And then we saw something very specific with Mamdani, where he had a Ramadan prayer, which I think is really interesting because I think I have this cut. Let's make sure I play the right cut here.
The reason that I love Ramadan so much is for everything else that it means, for the time of reflection, the time of focus, and really a time where you understand yourself as part of something larger than just as an individual. And even just having you all here today, even just sitting on the floor, the transformation of a space that I've only ever known in one way, frankly, it is a gift. And it's a real joy to have you all here.
All right, I got one more.
Want to make some of that?
A moment where you're asking yourself how you can reconnect to who growing up with, being taught that
So, but everyone probably at this point has seen the viral clip of Mamdani praying with his friends and eating off the floor. And it's one of these things where he's very clever because he does something subtle, because in a vacuum, none of these things are actually objectionable. I think generally people of faith are, it's a welcome thing in this country, and New York did vote for this stuff, but we're also witnessing a very slow motion subversion that did not go very well for all of Europe. And I was just playing a clip on the other show about from Merz, who's the chancellor of the EU, I think it is now, or the German chancellor, Merz, saying like the EU experiment has failed largely because of widespread immigration and importing other cultures that are incompatible with the West. And just know that is happening. Mamdani is a part of it. But in a vacuum, it's very hard to object to that peaceful display of faith that people did vote for. Though it's a tough spot for you guys in New York City, Emma. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. The people of New York City actually voted for a restoration and a rebirth of religion in public space. So we were delighted by the Ramadan ceremony at Gracie Mansion because we were having a religious revival in November. But it's like, no. See, this actually affirms what I predicted on this show, which was that Mamdani comes to Islam as a path, as a journey through progressivism, not as a journey through the religion that worships Allah. That's, I think, what and it's a virtue signal. It's a progressive virtue signal. How do I know that? Well, first of all, it was televised. Second of all, guest listing.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, obviously, as religious people, you know that this is something that is obviously sacred and between you and God. And if you're trying to be religious, it's typically not only televised, but televised including an event with influencers, including a trans influencer, which if you are an observer of Islam and frankly of Judaism and I think of Christianity, that's called a sin. So you typically wouldn't elevate that behavior in a religious ceremony, not to say that you would shun them, God forbid, or that you wouldn't talk to them or something, but elevating them as part of your religious practice, I don't know. And even if you wanted to say that maybe, okay, well, no, not trying to get publicity. Don't be so cynical, Emma. Who was the other person that was there? None other than Khalil, who is the most famous protester on earth from Columbia, a Syrian national from Columbia University, who came here to organize a pro-Palestine movement in New York City, and then the Trump administration tried to deport him, and he has somehow resisted up until now and become an icon of Trump's resistance of Trump's.
This is the guy, Mohammed Khalil, who was the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas activist at Columbia, who's here on a green card and was supposed to get sent home. But a judge cut in, a lawfare judge type of judge I would write about in Breaking the Law. And I think I did write about this one. I think this is in the book. Again, he's just a activist who hates his country and is trying to fund stuff that we disagree with and became the champion of the left.
Well, so that's it. So excuse me for interpreting this not as genuine and sincere a practice of his faith, which I could have a conversation about also, which I think I have a different opinion than you on, but not as a genuine practice of his faith, as a political exercise where we all get to have this ritual humiliation of having to submit to this as normal. This is not.
That's right. I think what he's doing is very dark and cynical. I think that this is what we say is not a God fear. He doesn't fear the Judeo-Christian God as I do, but this is what I talk about so often about how this is taking the Lord's name in vain. That's what it is. Yes. It's not saying GD, which I don't say in general, just because it's kind of like farting in public. It's like you shouldn't do it, like in general. But taking the Lord's name in vain is saying I'm walking with the Lord. I'm bringing the Lord to you. This is the message of the Lord, but it's not. It's a political, self-serving message. And I do think that's what he's doing here, is he's acting like this is how Muslims actually act, but it's actually a political action that he's taking.
100%. Exactly. That's it. Exactly. He's wrapping himself in a Quran. He's wrapping himself in a religion, in Islam, and using it as a vehicle to impress upon us all of his stupid political beliefs.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's like people are like, oh, people hate him for being Muslim or whatever, Islamophobia. It's like, are you joking? If you asked a devout Muslim if this behavior is appropriate, I can't imagine.
Do you think that the Khalil is better known for his religiosity or because he's an anti-ICE, kind of anti-American, pro-Hamas activist? We know the answer to this. It's because the guy doesn't like this country. That's why we know his name. And that's why if he liked America, we would never have heard of Muhammad Khalil. And very important point.
Yes. Observance of Islam. And he wanted to broadcast it to spread Islam. If we're like, let's say, going to the other extreme of interpreting this, that it's totally sincere. I'm sorry, but I don't think it's appropriate. I know that a lot of people, according to the First Amendment, and I saw Rick Rennell kind of talking about this on Twitter recently, like in the last day or two, about, no, this is we have a First Amendment and it's all fine and it's all religions are the same. I actually don't feel that way. I don't think that Islam is a Western compatible religion. Not to think that there should be no Muslims in America or something. That's not what I think. But I do think that there's something a bit intense about propagating Islam as something that's totally the same as Christianity and that should be exhibited in government. I actually do think that this is a Christian nation first and foremost. I think that Judaism has compatibility in America, which is why it's practiced so prevalently. Sure. No problems. But I don't agree that there are no problems on Islam's front. I don't think that the values are compatible. And I think that that's pretty obvious if you look at Europe, where they do have total freedom, obviously. And it's not going well culturally. And I am sensitive to cultural ramifications of stuff. I'm sorry, but seriously, we're talking about parenting in the last segment. I'm raising 2 daughters in this city. And I don't really like the attitude toward daughters in Islam. And that is just a matter of fact. So maybe that's kind of controversial to say, but not to say that, again, I don't think that you should be allowed to practice any religion you want in America. That's our Constitution. That's fair. But I don't like that in Gracie Mansion. I don't think it's appropriate. Maybe
that is a perfectly valid take. Emma Jo, I got to run and do some. I got to press the flash with some of the clients here on the show, make the show possible. So let me make sure to plug your stuff. If you are in need of a consultant, beckonstone.com, where Emma's a senior consultant. Yeah. And if you want to listen or watch Emma's other podcast, which is on Two-Way, the group chat, where do people go for that?
On YouTube, the group chat channel. I think we're starting a new channel this week. Okay. And you can also just find it on Two-Way with Mark Halprin. And yes. And if you need someone to figure out how to thread the needle about Islam in New York, call me.
Yeah, no, but it's intentionally off-putting is the point. That's what they're doing.
Thank you.
That's very, very important. All right, Emma Jo, I gotta run, but thank you as always, and we'll see you soon.